Hola, Facebook. It's Beto here, your daily divinity coach, here for episode number 28 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. I'm going to go ahead and tag some folks. So if you're watching the recorded video, feel free to go ahead and fast forward a few minutes. Just going to tag some folk so we can get an audience going for today's show. So again, just tagging some folks so we can get an audience going for today's show. And then we'll get started once we have an audience. Just going to tag a few more people that I see that are online right now. And then we're just going to give a few minutes for some people to join. And then we'll get started with the show momentarily. So again, just tagging some people so we can get an audience going, and then we'll get going with this show momentarily. So just going to tag a few more people here. Almost done. Just a few more. See who else we can tag that's online currently. Alright, just about done. Alright, let me go ahead and stop there. Alright, we got an audience. Awesome. Shout out to Emmylou. She likes her shout outs. If you could just give me a thumbs up, Juan, Emmylou, lady, let me know that, Veronica, let me know that you can hear me all right, the sound's working, or you can throw up some hearts or something, some likes. That would be greatly appreciated. Just want to make sure that, yep, there it goes. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure that the sound was working okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and give a brief introduction. So again, anybody watching the recorded video, feel free to go ahead and fast forward. So I am Beto. I am your daily divinity coach, and I'm here for Sunday Weekly Revival. It's my live series that takes place every Sunday. Starting on Instagram Live, I start at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Instagram Live. Then I flip over and I'm here with you all on Facebook Live, starting at 8:35 a.m. It used to be 8:30, but I realized I needed a 5-minute buffer between leaving Instagram and coming over to Facebook. So now 8:35 a.m. on Facebook and 11:35 a.m. I just blew that. 8:35 a.m. on the West Coast, where I'm originally from, San Francisco, Pacific Standard Time, and 11:35 a.m. out here on the East Coast, where I now live in Boston, Eastern Standard Time. So anyhow, again, here for episode number 28, entitled Oprah Winfrey, Desi, Arnaz, and manifesting your immortality, or your autonomy and your immortality. Today's Sunday, January 10th, 2021. Just a brief introduction. Again, everybody called me Beto. I'm your daily divinity coach. I post every day on multiple social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it's just written posts. And then every Sunday I'm here for Sunday Weekly Revival, with the exception of the first Sunday of every month when I do my monthly mailbag. And that's when I take your questions, and I pre-submitted questions, and I provide thoughtful responses. What do I talk about or I teach on? 3 main subjects or topics. Number 1, the law of attraction. I was tutored in the law of attraction starting at 10 years old by my mother. So many decades now, and she's still my law of attraction tutor. So I talk about the law of attraction, what I call manifesting abundance. I also teach on liberation theology, which I call manifesting justice, or if you like, manifesting social justice. And I also talk about immortality, or anti-aging, manifesting immortality. So, matter of fact, I produce a set of these bracelets here. It's probably hard for you to see, but a set of bracelets. The black one says manifesting immortality. There's a blue one that says manifesting abundance, and a gray one that reads manifesting justice. And I give them away for free. If you live within the U.S., shipping's always free. And if you live in Europe or in North America, until the end of March. I'm doing free shipping. Unfortunately, it's cost prohibitive, especially during the pandemic, to ship in other places. Like I have a lot of people in India that watch my shows, but unfortunately it's cost prohibitive to ship these bracelets out there. But if you live anywhere in the US, North America, or Europe, please reach out if you haven't received your set of Manifest bracelets. More than happy to send them out to you. And if you look at these bracelets and you say, I don't know if I'd wear them, but definitely my sister would, or my brother, or my friend, I'm more than happy to ship them out to the person you feel would benefit the most from these bracelets. I just need a name and an address. So a little bit more about me. I am a Master of Divinity. I hold a Master of Divinity degree. I'm a graduate of Harvard University Divinity School, and I am a pluralist. So I use language like the divine, the great teacher. I'm a pluralist. I have people from all faiths, Islam, Judaism, Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist, Hindu, searching spiritual, as well as atheists and agnostic that watch these shows. So people get something out of them from all over the world. And so anyhow, as a result, again, I use inclusive language like the divine, the great teacher, so that, you know, we can all be included in these teachings and these shows, in Sunday Weekly Revival, as well as my daily divinity post. Yeah, so really excited about the content of this show. Oprah Winfrey, Desi Arnaz, iconic characters, American pop culture icons, right? But before I start talking about Oprah Winfrey and Desi Arnaz, I did want to talk about the events of this week, right? The current event that took place on Wednesday, the armed insurrection at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. It was the first time in 200 years that there's been an insurrection here in the U.S. And it so happened during a pandemic, the likes of which we haven't seen in 100 years. So talk about living in historical times. We're living through a pandemic, and we just lived through the first armed insurrection in 200 years. It's unbelievable times that we're living in. And a lot of people would say they're scary times, and I probably wouldn't want to argue with that. Anyhow, the insurrection, 5 people died, you probably already know this, including a Capitol police officer, Brian Sicknick. He died, a hero, right, trying to stop the insurrectionists from coming into the Capitol. He was struck, I believe it was a fire extinguisher on the head, and he ended up succumbing to the injuries and passing away. Very sad. The violence was very sad. So anyhow, Brian died, Brian Sicknick, in total 5 people died. What does history tell us about these types of events, these insurrections? Well, unfortunately, they tell us that almost always, not always, but almost always, it does lead to longer campaigns of political violence. So this is probably why, if you've been watching the news or you know, hearing the news, that you've been hearing people talk about the need to begin a campaign against what could be prolonged political violence as a result of this armed insurrection. Some people have said, for example, that Pandora's box was opened, right? And when that happens, it can be challenging to close it. So hopefully it's not the case, but history tells us it's often the case. We know that 5 dead is a tragedy, but more violence had been planned, and thank God didn't happen. There are pipe bombs that were found, there are Molotov cocktails that were found, so there's more planned violence in addition to what we've seen, but thank God that didn't happen. Anyhow, that's what I'm going to stop here talking about the insurrection, because I am going to address it on the next episode. I didn't plan to talk about it today. I thought about it. I thought about talking about it, making it the content of this show. But honestly, I need a little emotional distance from the event that took place on Wednesday. So I'm going to address it next week for sure. I'll be back next week, and I'll be talking about the insurrection in more detail, and providing my thoughts, and connecting it with ancient text and ancient wisdom, like I always do. I've already got the title for next week's episode. I'm going to call it the Falling American Empire the emerging, again, the emerging fifth world, right? The fifth world of the Hopi Maya, and the pending currency revolt. And no, I'm not talking about Bitcoin and other currencies like that. I'm talking about spiritual currencies. But anyhow, again, we'll talk more about it next week. So please tune in next week. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And there's one other thing I wanted to talk about that took place this week. So this week I posted a photo on Thursday, and I've gotten questions about the photo. So if you have any questions on your mind, I wanted to go ahead and address it here on this show. Yes, that photo that I posted on Thursday, that was a photo of me and my girlfriend. Prior, I believe I've only posted photos, at least on Instagram, I'm not sure about Facebook, but prior I've only posted photos of myself and my two sons. I think there might have been one or two photos with an aunt or an uncle or that type of thing, but cousins, just mostly just me and my son. So a lot of people are asking, who is that? Yeah, it is my girlfriend. Her name is Legionaria. I'm still working on my Portuguese accent. She's from Minas Gerais, Brazil, by way of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And she likes to say that the universe brought us together. How romantic is that? The universe brought us together. So anyhow, wanted to make sure I addressed that because a lot of people had asked me about that. So we're going to go ahead and move on now to the content of today's show. Episode 28, Oprah Winfrey and Desi Arnaz manifesting your autonomy and immortality. Again, Sunday, January 10th, 2021. So Desi Arnaz, who was Desi Arnaz? Desi Arnaz was actually born in Cuba. He was born in Cuba and came to the U.S. as a teenager. So he's a Cuban American, an actor, a musician, a band leader, a comedian, and a TV film producer. So he was a lot of things. He was born in 1917 and roamed the earth until 1986. Desi Arnaz is best known for co-starring in the sitcom I Love Lucy with his wife Lucille Ball. So I know many watching have watched the TV situation comedy or sitcom I Love Lucy. I watched the reruns. The show aired for 6 seasons, from 1951 to 1957. There were 180 half-hour episodes that were produced during those 6 seasons, and it was the most watched show in the U.S. in 4 of those 6 seasons. It was the most watched show. And in 2012, so not too long ago, 8 years ago, it was voted the best TV show of all time. And this was a survey by ABC News and People Magazine. They also, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, they also made sure that there's a lot of integrity to the show, and I think that comes off as to why it was so became so popular. They didn't allow any ethnic jokes. There's no jokes about any jokes about people who are physically challenged or anything like that. Desi Arnaz did have a thick accent, right? He had a thick Cuban accent, but there, people weren't allowed to make fun of his accent. So again, a lot of integrity, except for his wife. He did allow his wife, to kind of poke fun, and they poke fun at each other, right, as husband and wife, and that was understood. But again, a lot of integrity, especially about, there being no ethnic jokes within the show, and it became, what was deemed now the best TV show of all time. It was very innovative. It was the first TV show to feature an ensemble cast, right? So it wasn't just about the two main characters, right? Ricky Ricardo was Desi Arnaz's role for this TV show. So it wasn't just about Arnaz and Ball. Their neighbors were part of the ensemble cast. If you remember, Fred and Ethel Mertz, they played huge roles in the TV show. Another innovation, it was the first scripted TV show shot on 35 millimeter film. And it was shot in front of a studio audience on 35 millimeter film. What did the 35 millimeter film enable? And it enabled every TV station around the country to broadcast high quality images of the show. So really revolutionary. why wasn't it done before? You know, the first question I thought of. It wasn't done before because 35 millimeter is expensive, especially back then, very expensive. So what happened is that the business genius of Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball came out, and they agreed to take salary cuts, right? They agreed to take pay cuts for the rights of the films. Again, business genius. So now they own the distribution rights of I Love Lucy, you know, the films. And so they're able to sell the series into syndication. The film also, 35 millimeter film, also enabled reruns to be shown during the series. So a lot of innovation took place. Not the least of which, obviously, was the content of the TV show itself. Arnaz and Ball were their own bosses. They had autonomy. They were their own bosses, right? And with their own company, Desi Lou Productions, right? They put the first name of together, right? Desi and Lucille Ball became Desi Lou. So they call their production company Desi Lou Production. They're on their own bosses. They're producing their own show. And once they sold sold the syndication, got that going and the reruns and everything, they had a lot of revenue coming in, right? They had finances coming in, and as a result, Desi Lou Productions was able to finance other endeavors, other TV shows, and some of the names of which I'm going to name 3 of them you might have heard before or even watched. The Untouchables, that was produced by Desi Lou Productions. That aired from 1959 to 1963, so shortly after I Love Lucy ended. The Andy Griffith Show, I used to watch Happy Days when it aired live, and the main character Happy Days starred as a child actor in the Andy Griffith Show. Andy Griffith Show aired from 1960 to 1968. And another one was My Three Sons, and that aired from 1960 to 1965. I didn't see any of those 3 live, or I Love Lucy, but I definitely saw the reruns. So anyhow, we're going to switch gears now and start talking about Oprah Winfrey and make the connection between Desi Arnaz and Oprah Winfrey. So the Desi Lou business model was this model of autonomy, right? And that's why I use the word autonomy in today's episode. I'm going to go ahead and flip this here. I actually got to flip a couple of these because I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and talk about all of that. Here we go, the Desi Lou business model. So this is a business model of autonomy, right? Autonomy for the artist, where the artist, in this case, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball owned and sold their own IP, right? Their own intellectual property. Oprah Winfrey took it to a whole nother level, right? Actually creating her own network. So anyhow, a little bit about Oprah Winfrey. She was born in 1954 in Mississippi, in rural Mississippi, right? Born into poverty. From 1954, right, to now, to 2020, from rural Mississippi, from poverty to being worth net per Forbes in 2020, $2.5 billion. Unbelievable, right? How did she do it? She took that model. She took that model of autonomy that Desi Lou, that Desi Arnaz created, right? This Cuban American who came over here as a teenager with a thick accent, created this genius business model. Oprah took it and built an unbelievable empire that's standing and working right now. It's operating right now. Who is Oprah? What else? What else about Oprah Winfrey? She's a talk show host, TV producer, actress, author, and philanthropist. She's the chairwoman and CEO of Harpo Productions, right? Harpo is Oprah spelled backwards. And she started Harpo Productions in 1986, and it's she's still running it today. She's also the chairwoman, CEO, and CCO of the Oprah Winfrey Network. Again, she has her own TV network. Took it to a whole other level, right? That Desi Lou business model. And she started that in 2011 and runs it today in the present time. So how did it all start for Oprah? Well, it really took off. Oprah as a star, really, or an icon, really, it started in 1983 when she moved to Chicago. So Oprah moved to Chicago in 1983, and she became the host of WLS TV's AM Chicago. AM Chicago was in the dumps. I mean, it was in the basement of ratings. But within a few months, just a few short months of taking over the show as host of AM Chicago, Oprah Winfrey took the show from the basement, from the ratings basement, to the #1 talk show in Chicago, unseating Donahue. At the time, Donahue was the talk show in Chicago. Oprah Winfrey surpassed Donahue. It was an amazing accomplishment in a short amount of time. And on the business side, incredible accomplishment. So Oprah Winfrey ended up bringing on Jeff Jacobs as her attorney. And she had heard about Jeff Jacobs, that he was a piranha, and she said, that's a good thing. I need a piranha. And they formed, they got together, and Jacobs became her attorney. So what did Jeff Jacobs do for Oprah? He did this. He convinced ABC, which owned WLS, right? WLS TV AM Chicago. ABC owned them. He convinced ABC to give Oprah Winfrey the syndication rights to the show. Now you might ask, as I did, why would ABC do that? Well, here's why. TV networks were not allowed to syndicate shows, which meant that Oprah Winfrey's show, right, at that time called AM Chicago, was going to be stuck in Chicago. So anyhow, Jacobs talked to them, got them to convince ABC to give Oprah the rights, and per the agreement, this is what ABC got out of it, is that ABC stations in other cities, so in other cities outside of Chicago, were given first opportunity, right, first dibs, to air the newly named show, because Jacobs changed the name of the show from AM Chicago to the Oprah Winfrey Show. So it was a win-win. It was a win-win. Oprah got the rights, was able to, to take it national, the show, or the newly named show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, and ABC got first dibs, or first rights, or first opportunity to their network shows to be able to air, right, their ABC stations to air the Oprah Winfrey Show. At the beginning, when Oprah Winfrey show went national, King World actually first syndicated the Oprah Winfrey Show. King World is they syndicated popular game shows like the Wheel of Fortune, if you've seen the Wheel of Fortune, also Jeopardy. So anyhow, King World was the original syndicators of the Oprah Winfrey Show, and in that first 2 years of syndication, in just 2 years, the Oprah Winfrey Show earned $115 million. First time show, first time national, $115 million. So incredible success. From the beginning, Oprah had just incredible success. In 1988, Jacobs went back and cut another deal, this time with ABC and King World, and Winfrey became the owner of the show. So no longer was King World involved in syndicating, but now Oprah had it all, right? She had her show, she had the syndication, right? She had everything. And her own company, right? Harpo Productions, her own production company. Desi Arnaz had Desi Lou Productions. Now Oprah Winfrey has Harpo Productions. And also her own network, right? The Oprah Winfrey Network. So anyhow, awards. Oprah's won numerous awards, right? I mean, too many to finish by the time that we have for this episode, but I'll name a few of them. She won 18 Daytime Emmy Awards. She won 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, a Tony Award, a Peabody Award, the Bob Hope Humanitarian Award, and again, on and on and on. She's won lots of well-deserved, plethora of well-deserved awards. So when I think of Oprah Winfrey, and I think of ancient text, I think about this piece of ancient text. Be shrewd as serpents, yet gentle as doves. No denying that Oprah Winfrey, right, $2.5 billion, shrewd business person, right, very shrewd. But she's also gentle, right, a gentle human being. She's a humanitarian, a philanthropist, right, has helped a lot of people. And when you watch her shows, or when you used to watch her shows, I remember her being very gentle, right, with people who would come on her show, with her audience, so yeah, when I think of Oprah Winfrey, I think of that text. Be shrewd as serpents, yet gentle as doves. And I also think about autonomy, right? One of the reasons I wanted to make sure to do this episode was when I was a graduate student here at Harvard University Divinity School. I had 3 jobs, and one of those jobs was as a research assistant. I worked as a research assistant at Harvard Business School. I was a student at Harvard Divinity School, took classes at the law school, and although I got the degree from the Divinity School, they let you take classes in other places, and one of the places I took was at the law school. But anyhow, I also worked as a research associate at the business school, and I was working in the leadership initiative there at the business school, and I was asked to research 20th century business leaders, and one of the business leaders that I researched was Desi Arnaz, and I knew that Desi Arnaz was Latino, right? Like me, like many of us watching this show, and so there's always this pride of Desi, coming from Cuba, and doing what he did was amazing. The accomplishments and success that he had. So when I was there at Harvard and I was researching Desi, it just brought a lot of pride, right? Brought a lot of pride, and so I wanted to make sure at some point that Desi made it onto Sunday Weekly Revival, and he did on episode 28. Anyhow, moving on, autonomy. When I think about autonomy and ancient texts and whatnot, I think about the example of the great teacher, right? The great teacher had a social location. The great teacher's ministry began when the great teacher was baptized by who? By John the Baptist, right? John the Baptist was the precursor to the ministry of the great teacher. So the great teacher had a social location. He wasn't just, universal from the beginning. And, that's one of the things, you learn when you're in divinity school, especially if you're like me, a student of liberation theologies. We all have a social location. This is why I always talk about, me and my past. I'm from San Francisco. My mom was born in Mexico, right? I was tutored in the law of attraction from her as a young child. My father was a faith healer. I moved and I live in Boston now. So, I want to not drill it in, but I want to make sure that that's, clear, because that's part of liberation theology, that we all have a social location. When people just come out and say, I'm universal, it's not truth, right? Nobody's just universal. It's not true. So everybody has a social location, and the historical great teacher did, right? His ministry started with his baptism by John the Baptist. Yet the great teacher maintained his autonomy, right? He wasn't the Hellenist, right? He wasn't the zealot. He wasn't a Sadducee. He wasn't a Pharisee. As a matter of fact, he called the Pharisees on their hypocrisy. And I think I got this on here. He said this: do not do according to their words, for they say and do not do. So he called, the great teacher, right, in ancient texts, called the Pharisees on their hypocrisy. The great teacher owned his own ministry, right? He had autonomy, and because he had that autonomy, he wasn't, brought down, right? It wasn't encumbered, wasn't censored by a religious organization or a corporation or whatnot. He was able to be himself, right? And to, do what he did, right? Do what he did best, was teach and perform miracles, and ultimately to prove immortality, right? That death is an untruth, right? Died, resurrected, and prophesied that, right? Within 3 days, you kill me, I'll be back, right? And then ascended to heaven alive in his physical body. So had autonomy to do that. That's very important to note. And yourselves, this is the connection between autonomy and immortality for this episode. As for yourself, you own your own immortality. It cannot be bought. It cannot be bartered. It cannot be sold. You own your own immortality. And for today's episode, we're going to talk about immortality insofar as aging. And when I think of aging, when I think of aging and ancient text, I think of this ancient text here, right? With the divine, one day is as 1,000 years. And 1,000 years as one day. Let me say that again. With the divine, one day is as 1,000 years. And 1,000 years as one day. Right? Time is relative. We know this. Science tells us this, right? Science tells us time is relative. Some physical equations can be done in either direction, right? Think of the number line, right? It goes both ways, right? And so can aging. Aging can go both ways. This is why I talk about reverse aging. And even theology, right? Theology tells us we are created in the image of the divine, making us ageless like the divine. So then, I'm sure you're thinking right now, right? But Bethel, you're saying all this about how aging can be reversed, the negative effects of aging, right? Wrinkles and ailments and stuff like that. But that's not the current reality, right? Well, it's not the current reality because we speak the current reality into existence. It's not truth. It may be real, but it's not truth, right? This idea that time only moves in one direction, right, is not true. Time actually, right, according to ancient texts, according to science, moves both ways, right? And if it moves both ways, then that means that we can reverse aging. That is truth. So then why is this idea so prevalent? Why did it become reality? Well, we speak it into existence, right? When we say things like, life is short, we all grow old and die, right? You're gonna grow old, you're gonna get sick, you're gonna have ailments, you're gonna die. We speak it into existence until somebody tells us it's not truth, it's not necessary. The other reason is because there are individuals, right? There are forces that don't want us to free ourselves of mental slavery, as Bob Marley would say, right? Free yourselves of mental slavery. You can do it. You own your own immortality, right? But there are forces that don't want that, right? They've produced this mental trick that time only moves in one direction, which is not truth. It might be reality for many, if not all right now, but it's not truth. You can own your own immortality. You can reverse the negative effects of aging. We are made of stardust. Again, science. This is science. We are made of stardust, and because we're made of stardust, our bodies have the ability to regenerate themselves. Again, why isn't this happening? Because people aren't told. They're not being told this. They're not being taught that. So many of our spiritual leaders either think they're universal from the beginning, they don't identify with the social location, which is an issue, or they're censored by their religious organization, right? And that's why autonomy is so important. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and end here. I thank you so much for joining. I'm very grateful for you. Grateful for this medium to be able to teach and talk and whatnot and provide ancient text and research and science and all this good stuff. It's been enjoyable, and again, I'm very grateful for you for tuning in. I hope you'll be back next week when I address the insurrection that took place on Wednesday. Again, next week's episode already got a title: The Falling American Empire, the Emerging Fifth World, and the Pending Currency Revolt. And that'll take place again next week, starting at 8:35 a.m. My shows in the past were 8:30 a.m., but I made a slight change, so now it's 8:35. Allow myself 5 minutes to go from being on Instagram to Facebook. So next week at 8:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Facebook Live. Hope you can join again, and thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and put on these reading glasses and turn off the episode. Blessings for your week. May you and yours be well. Bye-bye.